and welcome to Nsaroma's News Journal. Today is January 30th, and as we were sleeping late last night or early this morning, there was a horrific crash in the air with American Airlines and a Black Hawk helicopter. The plane was landing or approaching the Ronald Reagan Airport, and there was a collision. I seen the footage. I don't understand how the tracking, you know how they have the radar that will let you see if there's an object in front of you. On the footage that I seen, there was a direct collision, and then it went down into the Potomac River. On American Airlines, there were 60 passengers, 4 crew members, and I think 14 members of the figure skating team, and 3 soldiers on the Black Hawk helicopter. So my prayers go out to everybody. I know they're doing a search in the Potomac River. I hope that they are able to find survivors. I know they said that the river was freezing cold. In other news, we still have the federal funding freeze that was ordered by executive order to freeze federal funds, trillions of dollars, that cause anxiety and turmoil across the nation. From what I understand, Trump has rescinded that. For how long, I'm not sure. If he'll have a change of heart. From what I understand, they felt like it was causing confusion. But the freezing was for financial assistance, foreign assistance, for NGOs, non-governmental organizations, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, Meals on Wheels. It was very extensive, and so thank the Lord that it was rescinded. Thinking the Lord. I'm going to be doing a lot of praying these next 4 years because I know the Creator can change minds and hearts. They're also with the federal workforce. We know that, in case those who aren't up on the news, the Trump administration has ordered 2 million federal workers to resign by February 6th or be fired. If you resign now, you can get severance pay. I would say, if I were you, I would stay in those positions. If you don't have to resign, if your health is good, you feel like you still want to work, then work. Because from what I've read that's in the Project 25 book, I recommend that everyone reads it, that basically he wants to put people that are loyal to him in those federal positions. So stay on your job if you can, all right? In terms of immigration, we have the forced immigration of supposedly building the wall at the border so that people can't cross over, and then there's being forced mass deportation of supposedly illegals, which includes Mexicans, Brazilians, Colombians, and as strange as it seems like a few Native Americans, sorry, I don't mean to laugh, indigenous to America have been rounded up as well. Now, there has also been an executive order in these just 2 weeks of the administration, I think it was over 300 and something executive orders signed. The executive order for birthright citizenship, that you will no longer have birthright citizenship in this country. And how far-reaching that is, I don't know. Who could guess? I mean, so if you were here from Africa or Ukraine or wherever, and you have a baby here, but you're not actually born here, but your child were, does that mean that you both have to leave, even though you've been here for 5 or 10 years? I mean, it can happen. They did that in the Dominican Republic. They deported Haitians, and some of the Haitians were born there and lived there all their life, and they deported them and sent them back to Haiti. And some people knew nothing about Haiti. They had just lived in the Dominican Republic all their life. So this is very troubling, and I think we need to look at what does that mean, because there was something else that I was reading about that too. Maybe it'll come to me as I talk. But either way, this birthright citizenship, we need to see how does that affect us with our amendments, right? And how far can this go? Because it seems like this has been blocked by a judge in Seattle, this birthright citizenship thing, because he says it's part of the Constitution. So you can't undo the Constitution. So what I wanted to do, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. For those who don't know what the 14th Amendment is. So the 14th Amendment says, and this has to deal with birthright citizenship, okay? So we connecting the dots. So the 14th Amendment says, nor shall any state, I'm paraphrasing, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. That's why some people saying it's against the Constitution. So if you're saying now, if I'm born here, I cannot live here anymore, you're depriving them of liberty. So now it's got to go to the law, right? So this is where the judge comes in. Because states, I think it was 50 states, came together to say this is unconstitutional. So now if the judge allows it to go through, then we're changing the Constitution. Because this person has to have due process of the law. So anytime these things come up, you got to get a lawyer, you got to take it to court, and we see what happens there. But now if judges are appointed by political ideology and political affiliations, then we know how that might turn out, right? So I think this is something we need to really be watching. Also, we know that the 13th Amendment was the abolition of slavery, right? What was the 15th Amendment? The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment gave citizenship to all people born in the U.S. That's in the Constitution. So Trump is saying you can't be a citizen. Executive order. We have blockage from a judge. And the 15th Amendment gave African Americans the right to vote. And so we know that that has been challenged every time there's an election, to get black people off the rolls by saying, oh, you voted more than once. This is not your correct address. You don't even live here. I mean, so this is where the power is, right? It's in the vote. And even though we're doing the news, I do have just a little social commentary, but I was really, I can't say enough about how disappointed I was when people didn't get out and vote. Or people who voted either weren't well read, weren't up on what's going on in the world and in the nation. Were either ignorant and just didn't know, or were just like real sellouts. I mean, it reminds me of Harriet Tubman, who said, I could have freed more slaves if only they knew they were slaves. So I don't know why anyone would help someone make you a slave again or take away your freedoms. Okay, so moving on, I wanted to talk about the confirmations in the Senate. As we know, the Senate confirmations have been so far confirmed was EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. These were Senate confirmations. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he got a full vote. Homeland Security Kristi Noem got 59 votes, 34 noes. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth received 51 yeses and 50 noes. And it was a tie. The tiebreaker came from Vice President Vance. So, CI Director is John Ratcliffe, and let's see, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He got 99 votes for yes. So there we are with that. We still have people to be voted in, and so we'll see how that goes. I do want to say that I do have a person of the week that I do want to give homage to, and I will do that at the end of the podcast. I want to do a little international news, what's going on in Africa. In Nigeria and in Cameroon, they're fighting. The Anglophones and the Francophones in the Cameroon are fighting. They want to have their own separate statehood. Nigeria, the Igbos are fighting because they're separatists. They want to be separate from. It's actually an old battle that was rekindled in 2012. So they're fighting again, and that's sad because always the first casualties of war are the women and the children. They're usually raped or murdered. And so my heart goes out to them. In the Sudan, the northern Sudanese are running to the south because there's war in North Sudan. And the Southerners have allowed their people to come from the north because they're fleeing war and poverty. And there is support that's coming from the United Nations with food and shelter, but it's not enough. So the United Nations is asking for help with water and food. in Palestine. Before Biden left office, we know that he negotiated an agreement with Hamas and the prime minister there in Israel to release hostages. And so, from the latest news I've heard, they have been released. And so I hope that there comes peace in that area. The Palestinians need to have their own home state. And so does, the Israelis. But everyone deserves to live as a human being. And that's what God wants, and wants us to live like that as human beings with love for each other. So my person of the week, as we end the news, is I want to say I was just so elated when I heard I think I was listening to KPFA, and I ran from my bedroom into the living room to look at the TV screen. Like, am my ears right? Did they pardoned Leonard Peltier? Leonard Peltier is my person that I'm paying homage to this week. In case those who don't know who Leonard Peltier is, he's a Native American, he's an activist, and he, let's say, Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. There was a shooting in 1975. And he was accused of being one of the shooters. Now, he said that he was there. He was fighting with his people, other activists. But he said he didn't shoot. He didn't kill anyone. So they released him. President Biden pardoned him. He's 80 years old now. And I want to say that they petitioned for President Obama and many others, past presidents, to pardon Leonard Peltier, and they never did. I really thought Obama would do it, but he didn't. So I want to say hats off to President Biden for pardoning Leonard Peltier, because there were great human rights activists that pled for and campaigned for his clemency. Amnesty International was one, Nelson Mandela was one, Mother Teresa was one, and the 14th Dalai Lama. They all campaigned for his clemency, and he never got it. And so I just want to say hats off to you, Leonard Peltier. I respect you. I know what it's like to fight for freedom. Our president today just released 1,500 people that in their minds were fighting for what they felt was freedom and the insurrection that took place at the White House. So I'm glad that Biden released you to be with your family. And so that's it for today. And thank you for listening to Nsoroma News Journal. And I will